Hello. So thanks for joining me. I'm going to talk about micro-libraries. But first, thank you, Matt. GPU in my laptop broke yesterday, so I borrowed a MacBook from Matt. Thank you. He saved my life. So let's start. Who am I? Unsurprisingly, I'm a Ruby on Rails developer, and I'm trying to be actively working on some open source Ruby libraries. You can find my stuff on GitHub, obviously. Follow me on Twitter. This is one of the biggest projects, open source projects that I was working on recently. And I want to mention it because this talk is heavily based on my experience while working on this particular project. So what's on the agenda? I'm going to start by explaining some major differences between big libraries and micro libraries. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about micro libraries and frameworks. And I'm going to show you some example micro libraries that we already have. And at the end, I want to introduce you to a new project called MicroRB.com that I launched last weekend. So big libraries versus micro libraries. Here's a simple table and showing 4 major differences. So the first one is big libraries solve many problems, whereas micro libraries are focused on solving just one problem, which obviously leads to the next point, which is big libraries are, well, big, and they have lots of lines of code, right? Whereas micro libraries tend to have very small amount of code. Next thing is wide interfaces. Big libraries, since they support lots of stuff, they have very wide interfaces that might be even confusing to use. Whereas micro libraries are very focused. They have very narrow interfaces that are easy to use and pretty obvious. And the last thing is high churn metric. Big libraries tend to change a lot. Churn represents how often code in a given library is being changed. And in case of small libraries, it doesn't happen very often, especially after reaching the magical 1.0 version. So I want to talk a little bit about Rails influence. I think it's strictly related to the subject. So first of all, let's make it clear, Ruby developers love Rails, right? It's mostly because most of us started with Ruby through Rails, like myself included. So we learned Ruby through Rails, which is kind of weird because we started with a very specific mindset, Rails mindset. So I think that Rails has a huge impact on how we write Ruby code. And there are 3 things about Rails and the style it promotes, implicitly or explicitly, hard to say. So Rails is in favor of big libraries. It consists of just 5 libraries, and all of those libraries are really huge. I'm not sure if you ever look into, I don't know, Active Record, for example, or Active Support. Those are like thousands of lines of code. That's some serious complexity, really. The second thing is Active Support. It promoted monkey patching in an insane way. So everybody started just monkey patching everything. Personally, I think it's an anti-pattern, and in libraries it should be avoided. And the last thing is Active Record style, but I'm not talking about dealing with persistence or anything. This is something I've noticed recently. People tend to be afraid of introducing new classes and objects. And I kind of think that it's because we are used to Active Record, which is an object that does too many things, right? I've been receiving lots of feature requests in my projects where people were asking me, how about adding this and how about adding that? And I was like, no, it's good right now. We don't need any other stuff. It's not the concern here. It's something completely different. It should be handled by a separate layer. And they were like, why? But Rails gives me that. So this is the mindset, right? Rails mindset. So here's what I started thinking recently. I spent like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years talking to people, writing about it, that there are some problems with Rails, right? That maybe we should start thinking about different ways of using Rails. and I'm done with that. I'm like, nah, let's just move on. Like, Rails is great. I still like it for lots of stuff. I mean, most of the apps are simple. Rails is great for building simple apps, right? There was a joke that it should be renamed to Basecamp recently, so to make things obvious. And no, seriously, I think it's great. Let's just move on. And what I realized is that we should just do this. Embrace Unix philosophy. I think it's fundamental. I think that we should just move towards this and be happy with Rails, but if we need something else, then we should just do it by following Unix philosophy, which is pretty much this. So many Unix programs do quite trivial things in isolation, but combined with other programs become general and useful tools. And this is like the basic stuff. And I think we're missing a lot of those small, really focused tools that we could use and combine into higher level frameworks. So that's why I think that micro libraries are just great. And why would you even bother building a micro library? Why do you do that? When do you do that? So what I notice is there are three things here. The first one is probably most common situation where you have some complex functionality in a project that already exists, and you're like, okay, it seems like I'm going to need it in another project, or maybe even many other projects. So that's a great opportunity to just extract it, decouple it, maybe refactor it, specify the interface like really in a clear way, and have a micro library that you can share across your projects. The second use case is kind of similar. It's when you have some kind of a pattern that you identified and you keep on repeating the same code all over again everywhere. And I think it's also a good opportunity to just think about how it can be generalized, extracted, and encapsulated in a small library that you could just reuse. And the last use case is probably a rare one, that you just know already that there is a problem you want to solve. And it's a very specific problem, and it can be solved by a very focused library. Probably a good example is, I know, you're building an ORM and you need to generate SQL, so you want an SQL generator, right? So the biggest topic here is actually about frameworks. And currently, I think that frameworks should be built on top of micro libraries. And while building frameworks, I noticed that there are essentially two ways of doing that. The first one is bottom-up, and the opposite approach is top-down. Both are hard, and bottom-up is probably harder because it's great only when you really, really know what you're doing. And that does not happen very often. Usually there's this experimental phase when you just need to play with stuff and learn, right? So that's why I think that top-down approach is, in most of the cases, just better. Because you just don't know what you're doing exactly, and you need to learn. So the top-down approach happens almost all the time. You start with something on a higher level, and you just go down and lower, and while doing that, you're learning what you need. You're discovering the missing pieces, and you start working on those. So the top-down approach, in my opinion, can be misleading. It's great in theory, but what usually happens, at least in Ruby projects, is that people do this. They start building those huge libraries, huge frameworks, and they start mixing higher-level concepts, higher-level DSLs with the core domain logic, which ends up in disaster. Like Rails 2, for example. It was a disaster. I mean, it was rewritten, right? So I think this is a major mistake. When you start building a framework, you should be thinking about higher-level stuff. And you should make your framework just use the underlying micro-libraries and make the code very simple. Just build the DSL, build the higher-level interfaces. So Obviously, it's not so cool. There are some obvious challenges. I could probably have a separate talk just about that. So I'm just going to focus on the biggest problem, which is dependencies, right? So in Ruby, we have Ruby gems and bundler, and they are just slow. So from the user point of view, from the point of view of a programmer who is installing something or dealing with those gem files and version specifications, it's just annoying, right? If you have a lot of dependencies and you start having some conflicts, worst case, you're gonna be completely locked. You're not gonna be able to use something because of a version conflict. In some cases, it can be fixed by adjusting the version specifications, but it's just annoying. Another thing is that we have this thing called meta gems, but those are just gems that depend on many other gems. And when you install such a gem, so the meta gem, this happens. People just freak out seeing lots of gems being installed. I've seen this many times. People are like, oh my god, I thought this library is lightweight and it's installing 3 other libraries. What the heck? I'm not sure if that's a problem, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, dependencies can be problematic, but still, I believe that having really focused libraries that are combined together is a better approach, even though you do have some issues with dependencies. Yeah, and dependency hell. Two gems depending on different versions of another gem equals hell, right? I'm not even sure if that's solvable. We just have to deal with this. So I was thinking what we could do, because the biggest problem probably are frameworks that depend on the same thing. And when dependency hell starts and your project happens to heavily rely on those frameworks, you're going to be stuck with it. So that's a huge problem. That's probably the biggest problem. So I was thinking what to do. As I said, I don't think it's solvable, but something that can help is semantic versioning and be very, very strict about it. Because still, having a conflict between versions is better than releasing something that will install but will not work, right? So just be responsible, bump the version numbers correctly, and don't break the API without a really good reason, especially if your library is being used by some other huge frameworks or other libraries. And do maintain changelogs. Please do that. It's really simple. It can become quickly your habit. Sometimes a simple description in your changelog about some kind of a breaking change can save a lot of time, right? So please do that. And there are some tools that can help. We already have 2 online services. The first one is rubytoolbox.com. I'm not sure if you know, but you can actually see what other gems depend on your gem. I found that really useful. I found that some of my projects are being used by, there are some other gems that depend on my projects. So I started looking into those projects, getting in touch with the maintainer. So every time I started working on some breaking changes, what happens, I was just giving heads up, like, okay, you know, I'm working on this this change, and here's a pull request. It upgrades your gem to the latest version of my gem, and that's just helpful. And for you as a maintainer, it's easy, right? You know this stuff, so you will be able to quickly help other people. And I think that we should just do this. And the other one is gymnasium.com. You probably know that one, or you probably know both. It obviously shows the dependencies of your gem, so it's easier to be up to date with all the dependencies. So I'm going to show you some example micro-libraries that we already have. Most of those libraries were created while we were working on Ruby Object Mapper, or are more or less inspired by the work on the project. So the first one is Dan Cobb's equalizer. It's a tiny little gem that does this. You include a module, you pass what kind of attributes should be used, and then you get the equality methods for free. as well as a nice inspect method. I found it to be super useful, really. The other one is Marcus Anima. Marcus is the guy behind Mutant. You saw his presentation yesterday, by the way. And this is a nice example how you can combine things. Anima uses equalizer under the hood. So when you use Anima, which looks pretty similar to how equalizer works, you get a constructor that accepts a hash, and you also get all the equality methods and the inspect method from equalizer, which is pretty cool. Virtus also uses equalizer. There's this thing called value object. If you use that, then Virtus will use equalizer under the hood. It will automatically include it into your object, and you're going to get, again, equality methods and inspect for free. So how about frameworks? I mentioned that frameworks, in my opinion, should be built on top of smaller pieces. And I have an example, Ruby Object Mapper. It's becoming a framework. Ruby Object Mapper internally starts to look like a DSL, and that's it. We're only introducing higher level interfaces, higher level DSLs, and there's not really much logic there. And I think that's really cool. So one of the biggest problems to solve when building a data mapper library is having a mapper. When you load data from the database, you need to load them into objects. Then when you want to save them, you need to dump them into representation that can be digested by a database driver. And that's a tough problem, actually. So we're looking for a pure mapper library, and we found it. And again, Marcus, author of Mutant, also wrote something called Morpher, which recently became the de facto mapper in Ruby Object Mapper. And I think that's really cool, because when ROM uses Morpher, this whole huge problem is solved here. I just call one method, and everything happens. So this is a loader class in Ruby Object Mapper that receives data from the database and loads this into an object. And we use Morpher, which has this concept of transformers. And the only thing we have to do is to set it up, which is also simple. I'm not going to show you, but trust me, it's simple. And then we just call one method. And the cool thing about it is that we also get the inversion of this for free. So we also have a dumper class. And the only thing we need to do is to call transformer.inverse.call, and we get the opposite transformer. It's a huge problem, and it's solved in this library. If we were to solve it inside ROM, we would have like tons of code, and combine that with other problems that ROM would have to solve, we would have like, we would probably end up in a project that's bigger than Rails itself. And that wouldn't be maintainable, like, at all. So yeah, Morpher's transformer takes care of everything, and it's super cool. Spoiler, Virtus 2.0 will use Anima and Morpher under the hood. Virtus supposed to be a simple library, but it's become quite complicated in the inside. When I was working on the first stable version, I was actually confused about my own code because the interface became so wide, and I was like writing all the tests because I rewrote the entire test suite. So I was writing tests from the start, and I was like discovering more and more use cases. I was like, nah, that's too much. That's way too much. And I realized that Virtus is becoming, like, the biggest complexity in Virtus is actually handling the DSL. All the options, all the types, all the stuff that you can configure. This is a complexity on its own. And I want Virtus to handle just that. It's a higher level library. You use it inside your domain objects, you define attributes there, you specify the types, you specify the options. This is the core part of Virtus. Everything else, like mapping and stuff, this is super complicated. I don't want to have that in Virtus. And here we go, Anima and Morpher. Both libraries will solve my problems, and I will just focus on the DSL, and that's just awesome. So, last part. Initially, when we were working on Ruby Object Mapper, we always said that, yeah, we want to promote a specific style of development. We want to promote small libraries, focused interfaces, simplicity, etc. But eventually, I realized that, well, using a project, a data mapper implementation is not a good fit for that. So I realized I just want to have some separate stuff, separate project to promote what we do. So there's a website, microjs.com. I just found it by an accident, and I thought that, well, that's cool. I'm gonna do MicroRB. That's why I bought the domain, and I launched it last week. And so what's up with this? MicroRB.com basically we already started, but eventually it will gather all the libraries that meet certain criteria. We are still in the process of specifying those criteria, but those 4 differences between big libraries and micro libraries that I showed are going to probably become the initial criteria. So small libraries, small amount of code, focus on solving just one problem, and simplicity. I want this website to also be a tool for you, for everyone, to just find libraries that will solve your specific problem, and it should be easy to do so. I also want to have a separate list of libraries that are already used in production, that are stable, and you can be just confident that if you're picking up one of those libraries, then it's going to be just great. I also want to help maintainers to connect with potential contributors or existing contributors in a way that those libraries are in a good shape, and if somebody decides to just give up with the maintenance, it should be easy to display this message somewhere and find potential new maintainer. And this is probably the most important part. I want this this website, this initiative to promote Unix philosophy, the style of development that adheres to the Unix philosophy. I really want to just build kind of a new ecosystem that consists of really small libraries that are just great on their own, but at the same time you can combine them into higher level tools that are more convenient to use. Yep, I want to promote frameworks that are built on top of those libraries as well, like Ruby Object Mapper. I think it's just a better direction, and I want this website to promote this as well. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Piotr. Questions?
In your opinion, is there any place where you would consider building a big library?
No.
No? So you believe that all libraries can and should be split into like small focused libraries?
Yeah,
okay.
That's my current opinion.
Okay.
Hi. Here.
Where? Oh.
Yeah.
Hey.
Do you believe that Virtuous is still a micro library? Because you mentioned that it started off as, you know, the idea was to have like a single focused attributes, right? But you said that it has been becoming more and more complex, and you've been including other micro libraries. So do you still feel that it meets the criteria? Isn't it more like now an umbrella project that includes other things?
Yeah, precisely. I think it's no longer a small library. Yeah. It's huge. Even though I think it's like 2,000 something lines of code, so it's still not that bad, but the complexity is rather high. So no, I think it's like a micro framework, like a really tiny but still framework.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Did it ever went wrong for you? Here, sorry, over here. Did it ever went wrong for you? This kind of separation into very small concerns?
Yeah, of course. Especially in the beginning, because we were building at the same time simultaneously a few things. So when everything was in a flux, I've had major pain when, for example, upgrading something. But after some time, it all just settled down. And right now, we're like feeling the benefits. That's why I've become just confident that it was worth it. That's it. But honestly, yeah, I had experienced a lot of pain with dependencies. Yeah.
Right. I got a question. So, because the thing with, I think that why Unix philosophy works is everything's a pipe, and there's just one interface in and out, and then there's, let's say, there's a man page for every single kind of thing you can look for.
Yep.
So there's one central place for everything. Do you think that sort of conflicts with how, let's say, micro libraries in Ruby work, where you, instead of learning, let's say, one big framework, you're going to have to go through about 20 different libraries, learn each single DSL, and then try to keep that all up to date?
Yeah, that's an additional cost. However, as I said, I see frameworks as those higher level libraries, right? So when it comes to DSLs and more complicated interfaces, those will be frameworks. And micro libraries are just trivial. And in most of the cases, you won't even know that some library is used by some framework. Like in ROM, you will probably not even know that under the hood there is Morpher, for example. But you have access to it if you want. And that's the power, by the way. Like if at some point a given framework becomes a blocker for you for one reason or another, you will learn that under the hood there are those super powerful tools that you can use on their own. And yeah, of course, there will be more reading. You will have to spend more time learning about how certain elements work. Yeah, but is it bad? I mean, you think it's a problem? You need to know your stuff, right? In my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. So that's a question maybe not strictly related to your presentation, but it's related to your work. So I've been using Virtus for a while. I think it's a great tool. I've been looking forward for Data Mapper 2, and now it's called ROM, for quite some time already. And I guess you guys need some help. How can we help? So basically,
how can you help?
What's the process of people, if we would like to help you build a tool, how can we get started?
That's a tough question. We always work on those projects in an ad hoc way. So we don't have any kind of a, we try to have some kind of a nice roadmap with tasks and everything, but that never worked out. If you want to help, you should just talk to us on IRC, or just hit me on Twitter, send me an email, or post a message in our mailing list. Currently, I think that's the best way to do it, because there's a lot of stuff going on. So depending on what you're interested in, which part is interesting for you, we should just talk.
All right.
Yeah. Hi, over here. So I have a, yeah, right there. Jess. So when you put together micro libraries to build some kind of your own framework, how do you, well, from your personal experience, how to best make them cooperate? Do you make your own wrappers for them to maybe do some kinds of service objects? Maybe those libraries have some kind of their own small DSL, or maybe just passing blocks around?
Yeah, I do create wrappers, especially in Rails apps. I always try to have my own interface that I interact with, that I can mock, for example. And I always have integration tests that actually make sure that my code works with the underlying dependency.
I guess so. That was going to be my second question, so you already answered. So
Okay.
even just do integration tests and steps to see if it all works, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I got a follow-up question because now it sounds like on the one hand you're promoting micro libraries, but you don't want us to be using them directly. You still want us.
No,
to
I
be
do
using
want. Yeah, I do want you to use them if you need to.
So the question is like, why even have something like ROM? Why can't we just?
For the sake of convenience.
Okay, so there's still that thing that even though you have micro libraries, you still are of the opinion that you need bigger framework kind of designs.
You don't need, but it's convenient.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. It's a matter of convenience. Like I know, you can use certain parts in Rails because they are convenient, but you can skip them if you want. You will write a little bit more code, but it will do exactly what you need, right? So it's up to you. But the great power here is that you have a choice. If you want, you can skip something and just use things directly. Yeah.
What do you think about the workflow of...
Where are you?
What do you think about the workflow of extracting part of your application into the gem and use it like for start inside of only this application? So not only like extract small classes, but extract small gems and use it like only in your one application.
You're asking about the process, or?
Yeah. So you started adopting this micro library thing for other libraries to compose the huge, bigger libraries from smaller gems. But do you imagine it's possible for like encapsulating a part of domain logic into a gem?
I would only do that if that could be shared across other projects, if that would be useful for other projects. I wouldn't do that for the sake of decoupling or whatever. I mean, I'm still in favor of decoupling things, obviously, but you know, extracting something and introducing a dependency, it's an additional cost. So you have to, you know, have a good reason to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Any more questions? Any more coffee? Okay. We'll have. Thank you, Piotr, again.
Thank you.